14 stitches. That is what it cost me to finally understand my father would never see me as anything more than a tool. The ER nurse asked what happened to my head. I told her the truth. My father smashed a guitar into my head when I refused to perform at his political fundraiser. She barely blinked. When she asked if I wanted to press charges, I said no, not yet. Because sitting in that sterile room under fluorescent lights that felt like knives in my concussed brain, I made a decision. I wasn't going to destroy him with the law. I was going to do something far more devastating. I was going to succeed without him. If you have ever had to choose yourself over toxic family expectations, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me about your breaking point. Your story matters. Now let me take you back to where mine began. 6 months earlier, I was still playing the role of the obedient son. My name is Ethan Bellwether. In the Boston indie scene, they called me Rhyme. I was 20 years old, living in a colonial mansion in Newton, Massachusetts, that looked like the American dream but felt like a prison with Persian rugs. Every room smelled like expensive candles and fresh flowers. But underneath all that carefully curated perfection was rot. My father, Victor Bellwether, had built his real estate empire on a foundation of handshakes, threats, and strategic campaign donations. He wasn't just a developer. He was a kingmaker in Massachusetts politics. City council members, state representatives, even a few congressmen owed their careers to his fundraising networks. When Victor Bellwether called, politicians answered. When he suggested a zoning change, it happened. When he needed permits, fast-tracked inspectors suddenly became very cooperative. He had turned corruption into an art form, and he wore his influence like a crown. My mother, Alara, was his perfect complement. She had been a paralegal when they met, smart enough to understand the game, but ambitious enough to want to play it at a higher level. She had married Victor when I was 12, 2 years after my biological mother walked out. I remembered my real mom as soft-spoken and sad, always apologizing for things that weren't her fault. She left one morning while I was at school, and the only thing she left behind was a note that said she was sorry and that she loved me. My father burned it in front of me that same evening. "Your mother was weak," he told me. "Weakness is unacceptable in this family." I was 12 years old, and I never cried about her again, at least not where anyone could see. Alara was everything my real mother wasn't. Hard, calculating, obsessed with appearances. She had transformed herself into the perfect society wife, complete with Botox designer wardrobes and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She hosted charity luncheons where wealthy women ate tiny portions of expensive food and competed over whose husband had donated more to whatever cause was trending. She sat on boards for hospitals and museums, not because she cared about art or healthcare, but because it gave her access to the right social circles. My father collected politicians. My mother collected connections. Then there was my sister, Tiffany. She was 23 and had turned our family's dysfunction into a brand. Her Instagram had over 300,000 followers who envied our seemingly perfect life. She posted carefully staged photos of our house, our vacations to Martha's Vineyard, our family dinners where everyone smiled like we actually enjoyed each other's company. What her followers didn't see was how she would spend an hour setting up a single shot of her breakfast, making the staff remake her coffee 3 times to get the foam just right. They didn't see how she talked about other people like they were props in her content. She had once filmed a homeless man outside a restaurant and posted it with a caption about gratitude, never once considering that she was exploiting someone's suffering for likes. Tiffany and I had never been close, but things got worse after our father gave her a junior position at his company. She didn't actually do any work. She just showed up to important meetings, took selfies with politicians and business partners, and posted about being a young female entrepreneur breaking glass ceilings. The fact that her entire career existed because of nepotism seemed to escape her completely. When I pointed this out once, she looked at me with genuine confusion. "Everyone uses their advantages, Ethan. Stop being bitter because you don't have any." But I wasn't the only one suffering in that house. There was Noah, my 5-year-old half-brother, the product of Victor and Alara's marriage. He was this tiny, innocent kid with huge brown eyes and a laugh that sounded like bells. Noah was the only person in that family who loved without conditions. When he hugged you, he meant it. When he said he missed you, he actually did. He would draw me pictures in preschool stick figures of the two of us, holding hands with a son in the corner, and he would present them to me like they were priceless treasures. I kept every single one in a folder under my bed. Noah got sick a lot. Ear infections, stomach bugs, fevers that came out of nowhere and spiked dangerously high. Alara treated his illnesses like inconveniences, handing him off to whichever staff member was available while she went to her yoga class or her committee meeting. I was the one who sat with him during fevers, who read him stories when he couldn't sleep, who took him to the pediatrician when his temperature hit 103, and Alara said he was probably just being dramatic. The kid was 5. He didn't know how to be dramatic. He just knew how to be scared and in pain. The only thing that made life bearable was music. I had started playing guitar when I was 13, teaching myself from YouTube videos in my room with the door locked. My father hated it from the beginning. He saw music as a hobby for people who couldn't make it in the real world, a distraction from what he called actual ambition. When I told him I wanted to study music production in college, he laughed. Then he told me I would be going to business school or I would be paying for college myself. So I paid for it myself. Sort of. I worked as a busboy at a diner in Cambridge, taking the train in 3 nights a week and coming home smelling like grease and desperation. I saved every dollar until I could afford a beat-up Epiphone Les Paul from a pawn shop in Somerville. It wasn't much to look at. The finish was scratched, one of the tuning pegs was loose, and the previous owner had covered it in stickers from bands I had never heard of. But when I plugged it in for the first time, it sang. That guitar became my therapist, my escape route, my proof that I was more than just Victor Bellwether's disappointing son. I started playing open mics in Boston under the name Rhyme. I wrote songs about things I couldn't say out loud. About fathers who saw their children as investments. About mothers who valued status over love. About siblings who documented everything but felt nothing. The indie scene in Boston was small but vibrant, full of people who were making art because they had to, not because they thought it would make them rich. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. But I kept it secret. I told my family I was studying at the library or meeting friends when I was actually playing to rooms of 30 or 40 people in dive bars with sticky floors and bathrooms that smelled like regret. I came home late and snuck in through the back door, hiding my guitar in the garage and washing the smell of cigarette smoke and spilled beer off my clothes before anyone noticed. It felt like living a double life, and in a way I was. At home I was Ethan, the obedient son who was slowly suffocating under the weight of expectations. On stage I was Rhyme, the guy who said the things everyone else was too afraid to say. That double life couldn't last forever. Something had to give. I just didn't know it would happen so violently. The night everything changed started like any other Friday evening in the Bellwether house. My father had been in a good mood all week, which was usually a bad sign. When Victor was happy, it meant he was close to closing a deal, and when he was close to closing a deal, he expected everyone around him to perform perfectly. No mistakes, no hesitation, no resistance. We were all just pieces on his chessboard, and he moved us wherever he needed us to win. The house was in chaos that evening. Caterers rushed through the kitchen, preparing elaborate hors d'oeuvres that most guests would be too concerned about their diets to actually eat. Florists arranged massive centerpieces that probably cost more than my car. Staff members I had never seen before polished silver and arranged furniture and made sure every surface gleamed. My mother was in full general mode, barking orders and inspecting every detail with the intensity of someone planning a military operation. Tiffany was documenting the entire process for her Instagram stories, providing running commentary about the importance of attention to detail and tagging every vendor in the hopes of getting free products. The occasion was a private fundraiser for Senator Richard Aldrich, a career politician who was positioning himself for a run at the governor's mansion. Aldrich was exactly the kind of politician my father loved to cultivate. He was charismatic enough to win elections, but corrupt enough to be useful. He voted, however, the highest bidder told him to vote, and my father had been the highest bidder for most of Aldrich's career. This fundraiser was different, though. This wasn't just about maintaining a relationship. This was about cementing my father's position as Aldrich's most important supporter, the man who would control development contracts and zoning decisions across the state once Aldrich became governor. My father had promised Aldrich something special for the evening: live entertainment. Not just any musician, but his own son, the talented young guitarist who played the kind of indie rock that made old white politicians feel cool and relevant. He had told people I would be performing. He had made it part of his pitch, and he had never bothered to ask me if I was willing to do it. I was in my room that evening around 6, trying to work through a complicated bridge section for a new song. I had been working on it for weeks, trying to capture this feeling of being trapped in a burning building where all the exits were locked. The chord progression was tricky, moving between major and minor in ways that felt unsettling but right. I was so focused on getting it perfect that I didn't hear my father's footsteps until he was already opening my door. He didn't knock. He never knocked. The concept of privacy didn't exist in Victor Bellwether's world. You knocked on doors when you thought the person on the other side had a right to exclude you, and my father didn't believe anyone had the right to exclude him from anything. You are playing tonight, he said, walking into my room like he owned it, which technically he did. It wasn't a question or a request. It was a statement of fact delivered in that tone that expected immediate compliance. I kept my eyes on the guitar, finishing the phrase I had been working on. I am not playing tonight, I said quietly. I heard him stop walking. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. Ethan, he said, and there was a warning in his voice. Look at me when I am talking to you. I set down the guitar and looked up at him. He was wearing a custom-tailored suit that probably cost $5,000. His silver hair perfectly styled his face already red from the scotch he had been drinking since 4 o'clock. He looked like success. He looked like power. He looked like the kind of man who always got what he wanted. Senator Aldrich's campaign manager specifically requested live music, he said, moving closer. I told them my son is an exceptional talent. I told them you would be honored to perform. This is not a debate. I am not doing it, I repeated. Noah is sick. He has been running a fever all day, and this afternoon he had a seizure. A small one, but still a seizure. Mom gave him Tylenol and put him to bed, but I think he needs to see a doctor. I am staying home with him tonight. My father's expression didn't change, but something dark flickered in his eyes. Noah is fine. Children get fevers. Alara knows what she is doing. She is not a doctor, I said. And he needs someone to watch him. What if he has another seizure while everyone is downstairs drinking champagne and pretending to care about democracy? My father took another step closer, and I could smell the scotch on his breath mixed with the expensive cologne he wore, the kind that came in bottles that looked like crystal decanters. His whole life was about expensive things that were supposed to make him look important. You are making excuses, he said. You are embarrassed about your little hobby, and you don't want to perform in front of people who matter. You would rather play in dive bars for drunk college students who will never amount to anything just like you. Something hot flashed through my chest. This isn't about embarrassment, I said, standing up to face him. This is about the fact that you don't give a damn about Noah. You care more about impressing a corrupt politician than you do about your own son's health. Watch your mouth, my father said quietly, and that quiet was more dangerous than shouting. You don't get to talk to me like that in my house. Then maybe I won't, I said, and I heard the words coming out of my mouth before I could stop them. Maybe I will leave. Maybe I will take Noah somewhere. He will actually be taken care of instead of being treated like an inconvenience. My father's face went from red to purple. You are not taking anyone anywhere. You are a 20-year-old burnout with a worthless guitar and delusions of talent. You think you can make it on your own. You think anyone cares about your music. Let me tell you something, son. Without this family, without my name, without my connections, you are nothing. You are nobody. You will never be anything but a failure. Then maybe I would rather be nothing, I said, and my voice was shaking, but I kept going. Maybe I would rather be nothing than be another piece of your collection. I am not your performing monkey. I am not a bargaining chip you can trade for your dirty contracts. Find someone else to help you buy politicians. The room went completely silent. Even the noise from downstairs seemed to fade away. My father stared at me with an expression I had never seen before, something beyond anger, something almost like hatred. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, and I saw a vein pulsing in his temple. Everything I have given you, he said slowly, each word dropping like a stone. Every opportunity, every advantage, every privilege, and you throw it back in my face like it means nothing. It means nothing if it comes with these conditions, I said. It means nothing if I have to sell my soul to keep it. That was when he moved. Faster than I expected from a man who spent most of his time behind a desk. He grabbed the guitar from my hands, yanking it so hard that the strap broke. I tried to hold on, but his grip was stronger, fueled by rage and probably 3 scotches. One of the strings snapped with a sound like a gunshot, the metal wire whipping across my cheek and leaving a line of fire in its wake. I touched my face and my fingers came away red. My father held the guitar above his head, and for a second I thought he was going to smash it on the floor, but then something shifted in his expression, something cold and calculating. He looked at me, then at the guitar, then back at me, and I realized what he was about to do a split second before it happened. The body of the guitar came down hard, not toward the floor but toward my head. I tried to move, but there was nowhere to go. The impact was incredible, this explosion of pain and light and sound all at once. I felt something crack, felt something warm and wet running down the side of my face and neck. The room tilted sideways, and suddenly I was on the floor, staring up at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. I could hear my father screaming, but the words were muffled, like I was underwater. I saw him standing over me, still holding what was left of the guitar. The neck had broken off, completely hanging by the remaining strings like a corpse on a rope. There was blood on it. My blood. The expensive hardwood floor was developing a dark stain that spread slowly outward from where my head rested. "You ruined everything," my father was shouting, and his voice came through in waves of clarity and static. "You selfish, ungrateful piece of garbage. I gave you everything. Everything. And you throw it back in my face like it means nothing. You want to be nothing, fine. You are nothing." I tried to push myself up, but my arms wouldn't cooperate. Everything felt disconnected, like my brain was sending signals, but my body wasn't receiving them. I managed to roll onto my side, and that was when I saw them. My mother and Tiffany standing in the doorway, backlit by the hallway lights. For a moment, for one stupid, hopeful moment, I thought they were there to help me, that they would see me bleeding on the floor and their maternal instincts would kick in, that family loyalty would override everything else. I should have known better. "Victor," my mother shrieked, but she wasn't looking at me. She was staring at the blood on the Persian rug, this antique thing she had bought at an estate sale for $15,000 and never let anyone walk on with shoes. Oh my God, that is a $15,000 rug. How am I supposed to explain this to the guests? They are going to be here in an hour, and there is blood everywhere. She wasn't worried about the blood because it was mine. She was worried about the blood because it was going to be difficult to clean. Tiffany pulled out her phone, immediately angling it to get the best shot of the destruction. Her face was alight with something that looked almost like excitement. "Oh my God," she said, zooming in on the blood, then panning to my father, still holding the broken guitar, then back to me on the floor. "This is insane. This is like something from a movie." She circled around for a better angle, narrating for her phone's camera. "So basically, my brother decided to have a complete meltdown on the night of the most important event of our father's career, and now he is bleeding all over a priceless rug. This is so on brand for him. Always making everything about himself." "Help me," I managed to say, reaching toward them with a hand that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My mother finally looked at me, and the coldness in her eyes was worse than any physical pain. "You did this to yourself," she said, matter-of-factly. "If you had just done what your father asked, none of this would have happened. If you had just been a team player for once in your life, we wouldn't be in this situation. Now I have to cancel the most important evening of our lives because you couldn't control your temper." I didn't do anything I said or tried to say. The words came out slurred and wrong. "He hit me. He smashed a guitar into my head." "You provoked him," my mother snapped. "You always provoke him. You know he has a temper, and you push and push until he snaps, then you act surprised when there are consequences. This is your fault." Tiffany kept filming. She was doing a slow circle around me, now capturing every angle. "You know what she said conversationally? This is probably going to be really good for engagement. People love drama. I bet this gets like 50,000 views easy." She crouched down next to me, getting a close-up of the blood. "Does it hurt? Like on a scale of 1 to 10? I stared at her, unable to process what I was hearing. "You are filming this," I said. "Obviously," she replied. "This is content gold. Besides, you are the one who decided to get violent with Dad. Someone needs to document what really happened in case you try to lie about it later." "I got violent with him," I repeated, and something like hysterical laughter tried to bubble up through the pain and shock. "He hit me with a guitar. Look at me. I am bleeding on the floor, and you are worried about views and hashtags." "Don't be so dramatic," Tiffany said, standing back up and adjusting her angle. "You are fine. Head wounds just bleed a lot. You are probably not even hurt that bad." She looked at my mother. "Should we call someone and have the police show up during the fundraiser?" My mother looked horrified. "Absolutely not." She glanced at her watch. "The guests will be arriving soon. We need to get this cleaned up, and we need to get him out of sight." She looked at my father. "Victor, take him to his room and lock the door. We will deal with this after everyone leaves." My father finally seemed to come back to himself. He looked down at the broken guitar in his hands, then at me on the floor, and something that might have been regret flickered across his face. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by his usual mask of control. He dropped the guitar and wiped his hands on his pants like he was removing evidence. "Fine," he said. "But after tonight he is out. I am done with him." I don't know how I managed to get to my feet. Everything hurt, everything spun, but somehow I stood up. My vision was blurry around the edges, and there was a ringing in my ears that wouldn't stop. Blood dripped down my neck and soaked into my shirt collar. I looked at the three of them standing there, this family that was supposed to love me, and I saw them clearly for the first time. My father, the man who had just committed assault, rather than accept being told no. My mother more concerned about her social standing than her stepson's skull fracture, my sister turning my trauma into content for strangers on the internet. I am leaving, I said, and my voice came out surprisingly steady. Where exactly are you going to go? My mother asked with a little laugh. You have no money, no job, no prospects. You will come crawling back within a week. I stumbled toward the door, pushing past them. I am taking Noah with me, I said. That stopped them. My father grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. You are not taking anyone anywhere. Noah is staying here. I pulled my arm away, nearly falling from the effort. Watch me. I walked down the hall to Noah's room, leaving a trail of blood drops on the white carpet. My mother was shouting something about calling the police about having me arrested for kidnapping, but I didn't care anymore. All I cared about was getting to Noah. He was in his bed, small and feverish, his face flushed and damp with sweat. When he saw me covered in blood, his eyes went wide and he started to cry. Ethan, what happened? Are you okay? I am fine, buddy, I said, even though I was pretty sure I was concussed and possibly dying. I sat down on the edge of his bed and tried to smile. How about we go on an adventure? Noah sniffled. What kind of adventure? The kind where we go somewhere new and exciting. Just you and me. Would you like that? He nodded slowly, still looking scared. Will Mommy and Daddy come too? Not this time, I said. This is a special trip for just us. Can you be brave for me? I grabbed his Spider-Man backpack from the closet and threw in some clothes, his favorite stuffed dinosaur, the medication for his fever. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip the bag. I wrapped Noah in his blanket, the soft blue one with stars on it that he refused to sleep without, and picked him up. He was heavier than I expected, or maybe I was just weaker than I thought. When I carried him back into the hallway, my family was waiting. My father blocked the stairs, his face hard and cold. Put him down, he said. Move, I said. You are not thinking clearly, my mother said, her voice taking on a fake sweetness that made my skin crawl. You are hurt and upset, and you are not making good decisions. Put Noah back to bed and we can talk about this like reasonable people. We are done talking, I said. You have made it very clear where I stand in this family. I am just making it official. If you walk out that door, my father said slowly, you are dead to us. No money, no support, nothing. You will be on your own. I have been on my own for years, I said. I just didn't realize it until tonight. I walked past him, half expecting him to grab me again to try to take Noah away. But he just stood there watching us go with an expression I couldn't read. Tiffany was still filming, of course, capturing every moment for posterity and profit. When we reached the front door, I heard my mother's voice one last time. You are making the biggest mistake of your life, she called out. You will regret this. I opened the door and stepped out into the cool April evening. The caterers' trucks were parked in the circular driveway, staff members unloading crates of champagne and equipment for the fundraiser. They stared at me at the blood covering the side of my face, at the small child wrapped in a blanket in my arms. Nobody said anything. Nobody asked if I needed help. I walked to my car, a beat-up Honda Civic that I had bought with my own money from the diner. I strapped Noah into the back seat, and he immediately asked where we were going. Somewhere safe, I told him. Somewhere nobody will hurt us. I started the car and pulled out of the driveway, watching our house shrink in the rearview mirror. The last thing I saw was Tiffany standing on the front steps, still holding up her phone, still filming. Always documenting, never participating. I drove to the emergency room at Newton Wellesley Hospital, and that was where everything started to come back into focus. The nurse who examined me was in her 50s, with kind eyes and hands that were gentle when they touched the wound on my head. She didn't lecture me about pressing charges, didn't push when I said I wasn't ready to talk about what happened. She just cleaned the wound, stitched it up, and gave me instructions for signs of serious concussion. Then she gave me the name of a social worker who specialized in domestic violence cases. While I waited in the ER, still dizzy and nauseous from the concussion, I made a decision. I wasn't going to run away and hide. I wasn't going to let my father win by turning me into a victim. I was going to rebuild myself from nothing, and then I was going to make him watch as I succeeded without him. The first week was hell. I had a little over $200 in my checking account from my last few shifts at the diner. I found a room on Craigslist, a tiny space above an auto repair shop in a rough part of Brooklyn. The landlord was a Russian immigrant named Dmitri, who took one look at the stitches on my head and Noah sleeping in my arms and asked no questions. He accepted 3 months' rent in cash and handed me a key to a room that smelled like motor oil and had a bathroom I shared with 2 other tenants. The room was maybe 200 square feet, with a hot plate, a mini fridge that hummed constantly, and a window that looked out onto a brick wall. There was no door on the bedroom, just a curtain. The air mattress I bought at Target took up most of the floor space, but it was ours. Nobody could hurt us there. Noah's fever finally broke on the third day. I took him to a free clinic in Bedford-Stuyvesant, where a young doctor with tired eyes examined him thoroughly. Febrile seizures are common in young children, she told me gently. Usually not dangerous, but definitely scary. You did the right thing bringing him in. She gave me information about sliding scale pediatric care and asked very carefully if we were safe. I told her we were safer than we had ever been, and I meant it. But we had to eat, and eat meant money. I signed up for DoorDash and spent my days biking through Brooklyn delivering food. The physical exertion made my head throb, and sometimes I had to stop and lean against a building until the dizziness passed. The stitches itched as they healed, and I wore a Yankees cap pulled low to hide the scar that was forming. I made maybe $50 or $60 a day on good days, barely enough to cover food and diapers and the occasional medical expense. At night, after Noah fell asleep on our shared air mattress, I would sneak out with my acoustic guitar. I had managed to buy it at a pawn shop in Queens for $40, a beaten-up Yamaha with a crack in the body and strings that were probably older than Noah, but it played and that was enough. I started busking in the subway stations. Union Square Times, Square Washington, Square Park when the weather was good. I wore a medical mask and a different hat, not wanting anyone to recognize me, not ready to be found. Busking was humbling in ways I hadn't expected. Most people walked past like I was invisible. I was part of the city's background noise, as ignorable as traffic or pigeons. Some people threw coins into my open guitar case, quarters and dimes that clinked against each other. A few stopped to listen for a song or two before moving on with their lives. I played everything I had written, all those songs about dysfunctional families and impossible expectations and the weight of trying to be someone you weren't. One night in late May, about a month after we had left, I was playing at the Union Square station. It was late, almost midnight, and the crowd had thinned to just a few people waiting for trains. I was tired, my fingers were cramping, and I was debating packing up when I noticed a man standing off to the side just watching me. He was in his 50s maybe, black with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see more than most people. He stood there through 3 complete songs, just listening with his arms crossed and his head tilted like he was analyzing every note. When I finished the 3rd song and started packing up, he walked over and dropped a $50 bill in my case. That was more than I had made in the previous 3 hours combined. "You are too good to be playing in a subway," he said. I shrugged, uncomfortable with the compliment. "It pays some bills." "Not enough bills, I'm guessing," he said. He pulled out a business card. "My name is Marcus Jones. I own a bar in Williamsburg called The Chord. We do live music on weekends. Come by tomorrow night. I think we should talk." I looked at the card, turning it over in my fingers. "Why would you want to help me? You don't even know me." Marcus smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Because 30 years ago, I was exactly where you are right now. Playing for spare change, sleeping in places that weren't quite homes, trying to figure out how to survive while keeping my dreams alive. Someone helped me. I am just paying it forward." He tapped the card. "Tomorrow night, 9 o'clock. Just bring your guitar and an open mind." The next evening, after I dropped Noah off at an evening childcare program run by a community center that charged on a sliding scale, I took the train to Williamsburg. The Chord was a small venue tucked between a bodega and a vintage clothing store, the kind of place you would walk past without noticing unless you were looking for it. Inside, it was dark and intimate, with exposed brick walls covered in old concert posters and a small stage that looked like it had hosted 1,000 dreams and disappointments. Marcus was behind the bar talking to a woman with short gray hair and the kind of presence that made you pay attention. When he saw me, he waved me over and introduced her as Patricia Chen. She was a lawyer, he said, specializing in family law and domestic violence cases. My stomach clenched. "I told Patricia about what you mentioned last night," Marcus said. "About how you are on your own with your little brother. She wanted to meet you." Patricia shook my hand with a firm grip and intelligent eyes that seemed to assess everything at once. "Marcus told me you are in a difficult situation," she said. "I don't need details right now. I just want you to know that if you ever need legal help, especially regarding custody or protection orders, my firm works on a sliding scale, sometimes pro bono for cases like yours." "I don't have any money for a lawyer," I said. "That is what sliding scale means," Patricia replied. "We work with what you have. But honestly, Marcus showed me some videos of your busking, and I think you have something real. Focus on building that first. The legal stuff can wait until you are stable. Just know that the option exists." Over the next few months, the Chord became my second home. Marcus gave me a regular Friday night slot opening for more established acts. I started with maybe 20 people in the audience, most of them friends of Marcus who were doing him a favor by showing up. But word spread slowly through the Brooklyn indie scene. People liked my sound, this raw combination of folk and rock with lyrics that felt honest in a way most music didn't. They liked that I didn't try to be commercial or radio-friendly. They liked that I wrote about real pain without making it performative. I made CDs on a cheap burner I bought at Staples, hand-decorating the covers with marker drawings and selling them for $5 after shows. On good nights, I would sell 10 or 15. That money went into a coffee can in our room, slowly building towards something bigger. I upgraded from DoorDash to food delivery by car once I saved enough for a beater sedan. I picked up a weekend shift washing dishes at a restaurant in Bushwick. Every penny went into the coffee can or into taking care of Noah. Noah was thriving in ways that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. I enrolled him in a Head Start program where he made friends and learned his letters. His fevers became less frequent. He stopped having nightmares about the night we left. He called me Ethan Daddy, which was grammatically incorrect but emotionally perfect. He would draw pictures of our tiny room above the auto shop and tell his teachers it was his castle. To him, poverty wasn't deprivation. It was freedom. 3 months in, something shifted. I had been playing at the Chord every Friday, and my audience had grown from 20 people to 50, then to 75. People were coming specifically to see me, not just showing up because they liked the venue. I was selling 30 or 40 CDs a night. Marcus started paying me $200 per show, then $300. It wasn't enough to live on comfortably, but it was enough to stop feeling like I was drowning every single day. That was when I decided it was time to buy a real guitar. Not a pawn shop acoustic with broken strings, but something that could match the sound in my head. I had been saving for months, adding every spare dollar to the coffee can. When I finally counted it out on the air mattress while Noah slept, I had $2,300. It felt like a fortune. I went to a guitar shop in Manhattan, a place called Chelsea Guitars that Marcus had recommended. The owner was a guy in his 60s who had clearly seen every type of musician walk through his door. I told him my budget and what I was looking for. He listened, nodded, and disappeared into the back room. When he came out, he was carrying a Fender American Special Stratocaster with a sunburst finish that looked like fire frozen in wood. "This one has been waiting for the right player," he said, handing it to me. "Previous owner was a session musician who upgraded. It has some wear, but it plays like butter." I plugged it into an amp and played the opening chords of one of my songs. The sound that came out was everything I had been hearing in my head for years but had never been able to produce. It was bright and clear and powerful. My hands were shaking. I played through the entire song, and when I finished, there were tears running down my face. The owner looked away politely, giving me a moment to compose myself. "You want it?" he asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He rang it up for $1,800, threw in a hard case and a few sets of strings, and told me to come back when I was famous, so he could tell people he sold me my first real guitar. I walked out of that shop carrying the Stratocaster, like it was made of glass and gold. That night at the Chord, I played with my new guitar for the first time in front of an audience. The sound was transformative. I could hear nuances I had never been able to express before, could bend notes in ways that the cheap guitars couldn't handle. The crowd responded to it too. The room was packed, maybe 100 people, and they were actually listening instead of just drinking and talking. When I finished my set, people stood up and applauded. Marcus had tears in his eyes. After the show, a woman in her 30s approached me. She had short, dark hair and the kind of expensive leather jacket that suggested she was more than just a casual music fan. She introduced herself as Lisa Kowalski from Anthem Records, an independent label that specialized in exactly the kind of music I played. She handed me her card and asked if I would be interested in coming to their office to talk about a possible recording contract. I held that card like it was a winning lottery ticket. I said yes before she could change her mind. But success has a way of attracting attention, and not all of it is welcome. 2 weeks after that conversation with Lisa on a Tuesday evening in early August, I was at the Chord running a sound check when Marcus came backstage with an expression I had never seen before. He looked worried, maybe even scared. "Your father is here," he said quietly. "Out front. Alone." My heart started hammering. "Does he know about Noah? Is Noah safe?" Marcus shook his head quickly. "Noah is fine. He is at the community center like always. Your father doesn't know where you live. He just knows you play here on Friday nights. He tracked you down through your music." I set down the Stratocaster carefully and tried to slow my breathing. "What does he want?" He says he needs to talk to you. Says it is important. Marcus put a hand on my shoulder. You don't have to do this. I can have him escorted out. I know people. No, I said. I need to face him eventually. Might as well be now. I walked out to the bar and there he was. Victor Bellwether, looking substantially less impressive than I remembered. He had lost weight, his expensive suit hanging loose on his frame. There were shadows under his eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide. He was sitting at the bar nursing what looked like scotch, and when he saw me, something complicated flickered across his face. Ethan, he said, standing up. You look good. Healthy. I stayed several feet away, maintaining distance. What do you want? He gestured to the empty stool next to him. Can we talk just for a few minutes? I didn't sit down. You 5 minutes. My father took a breath, and for a moment he looked almost vulnerable. Things have changed since you left. Senator Aldrich is hosting a major campaign event next month. It is going to be televised nationally. CNN, MSNBC, all the networks. It is the biggest event of the election cycle. Good for him, I said flatly. I need you to perform, my father continued. The campaign wants original music, something that appeals to younger voters. They heard about you somehow, about this indie musician making waves in Brooklyn. They don't know we are related. When I told them you were my son, they were thrilled. Absolutely not, I said. My father reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. He set it on the bar and clicked open a pen. Name your price, he said. I will write you a blank check right now, whatever you want. And after the event, I have contacts with promoters in New York, Boston, Los Angeles. I can get you real gigs, real venues. You could be playing Madison Square Garden within a year instead of dive bars in Brooklyn. I stared at the checkbook, then at my father. This is exactly why I left, I said quietly. You think everything has a price. You think everyone can be bought. Everyone has a price, he said. I am offering you yours. Not everything is for sale, I replied. Especially not my integrity. Find another performing monkey. My father's expression hardened. You are making a mistake. You have no idea how difficult it is to make it in the music industry. You think your little indie following is going to support you. You think a few hundred fans in Brooklyn is success. I am offering you a shortcut to everything you have ever wanted. I don't want shortcuts built on your corruption, I said. I don't want success that comes with strings attached. I played here for 20 people when I started, and I worked my way up to 100. If I make it to Madison Square Garden, it will be because I earned it, not because my father bought it for me. You are being naive, he said. I am being free, I replied. And that is worth more than any check you could write. I turned to walk away, but my father grabbed my arm. His grip was tight, desperate. Please, he said, and I heard something in his voice I had never heard before. Fear. I need this, Ethan. The senator is angry that the last fundraiser fell apart. If I don't deliver something valuable this time, I lose his support. And if I lose his support, I lose everything. The development contracts, the political connections, all of it. Let it burn, I said, pulling my arm free. You built your empire on corruption and violence. I hope it all comes crashing down. My father stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact second when desperation turned back into anger. You are going to regret this, he said quietly. You think you are safe from me. You think I can't destroy you. Try it, I said. I have nothing left for you to take. He left without another word, slamming the door hard enough to make the bottles behind the bar rattle. Marcus came over immediately. You okay? He asked. I am getting there, I said. But I think we need to talk to Patricia. Soon. The next 2 weeks were tense. I kept expecting my father to show up again to try some new angle or threat, but there was nothing. Just silence. It was almost worse than confrontation because I couldn't shake the feeling that he was planning something. Then on a Friday evening, 3 weeks after that conversation at the bar, everything came to a head. I had just gotten home from picking up Noah at the community center. We were sitting on the air mattress eating pizza from the dollar slice place down the street when I heard footsteps on the stairs outside. Heavy footsteps. Multiple people. Someone pounded on the door. Ethan, open up. I recognized my mother's voice immediately. I put Noah in the tiny bathroom and told him to stay quiet. Then I opened the door. Standing in the narrow hallway were my father, my mother, and Tiffany. My father looked furious. My mother looked disgusted. Tiffany was already filming. This is where you have been living, my mother said, her voice dripping with contempt. This is the life you chose. She looked around the tiny room with its single hot plate and shared bathroom. You gave up everything for this. I gave up abuse for safety, I corrected. Big difference. Tiffany was doing a slow pan of the room, capturing every detail of my poverty. This is actually insane, she said to her phone. My brother walked away from a mansion to live in a room that is literally smaller than our closets. She zoomed in on the air mattress. Is that where you sleep with Noah? Oh my God, this is child endangerment. He is healthy and happy and safe, I said. That is more than he ever was in your house. My mother stepped closer. Here is what is going to happen, she said, her voice cold and controlled. You are going to give Noah back to us right now, or I am calling Child Protective Services. I am going to report you for living in unsafe conditions with inadequate resources. I am going to tell them you kidnapped your brother and have been keeping him in poverty when he could have been living in comfort with his family. Noah is my family, I said. You are just people who share DNA. We are his legal guardians, my father interjected. You have no legal right to him. What you did was kidnapping. We could have you arrested right now. Do it, I said, calling his bluff. Call the police. Let them see the scar on my head where you assaulted me. Let them see the medical records from the ER. Let them see the video Tiffany took of you holding a broken guitar covered in my blood. Please call them. My father's jaw tightened. You have no proof of anything. Don't I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I had learned a few things about documentation over the past months. I pulled up a photo of the broken guitar that I had carefully preserved pieces marked with evidence tape, then another photo of my stitches, then another of the medical report from the ER that documented blunt force trauma to the head, and then I played a video. It was Tiffany's Instagram story from that night, the one she had posted and then deleted, but that several people had screen recorded. There was my father holding the broken guitar. There was my blood on the Persian rug. There was my mother complaining about the mess instead of checking if I was alive. You documented your own crimes, I said, looking at Tiffany. You posted it publicly. Multiple people saved it. Did you really think the internet forgets? Tiffany's face went pale. I deleted that, she said. That was private. Nothing is private once you post it, I replied. Welcome to the digital age. That was when Marcus and Patricia appeared at the top of the stairs. They must have been waiting in Marcus's car ready to intervene if things got ugly. Patricia was carrying her leather folder again, and she looked like she meant business. Mr. and Mrs. Bellwether, Patricia said pleasantly. So glad you could make it. You have saved me a trip. She pulled out a thick stack of papers. This is a permanent restraining order filed and approved by a judge this morning, which prohibits Victor Bellwether from coming within 500 feet of Ethan Bellwether or Noah Bellwether. She held out the papers. You are being served. My father took the papers with shaking hands. His face had gone from red to white. This is ridiculous, he said. You can't do this. Already did, Patricia replied cheerfully. She turned to my mother. And this is an emergency custody order granting Ethan temporary legal guardianship of Noah, pending a full hearing in family court. The judge reviewed the medical records, the video evidence, and testimony from Noah's pediatrician about his improved health since leaving your home. She was very sympathetic to Ethan's case. My mother looked like she had been slapped. You can't just take my son away from me. Actually, I can, I said. You made it easy. Every threat you made, every dismissal of Noah's health problems, every time you prioritized your social calendar over his well-being. It all mattered. Patricia pulled out another set of documents. These are statements from the staff at Noah's Head Start program documenting his consistent attendance, his improved health markers, and his reported happiness about his living situation. She flipped a page. And this is a statement from his pediatrician noting that he has had 0 febrile seizures since leaving your home, possibly because someone is actually monitoring his health and seeking appropriate medical care. But the best part, Patricia continued, pulling out one more document, is this. It is a compilation of your social media posts, Tiffany. The ones where you documented various family events and inadvertently captured evidence of neglect and emotional abuse. There is a particularly good one from Christmas where Noah is crying in the background, and your mother is telling him to be quiet because he is ruining the aesthetic of the photos. That was taken out of context, Tiffany said weakly. Context is what we make of it in court, Patricia replied, and the context here is a pattern of prioritizing image over well-being. I stepped forward, and for the first time in my life I felt like I was looking down at my father instead of up at him. You tried to price me at the cost of one broken guitar, I said. You tried to break me literally and figuratively. You wanted to prove I was nothing without your name and your money and your connections. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. It was the business card from Lisa at Anthem Records. But here is the thing about being nothing. When you are nothing, you have nothing to lose. When you have nothing to lose, you can take risks. When you take risks, you can build something real. I came to this city with $200 and a concussed brain and a 5-year-old who was depending on me. And from that, nothing, I built this. I gestured to Marcus, to Patricia, to the guitar case leaning against the wall. I found people who valued me for who I am, not what I could do for them. I found success on my own terms. And next month, I am signing with an indie label that wants to record my music exactly as it is, no compromises. My father's hands were shaking as he read through the restraining order. You are going to fail, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. You are going to crash and burn, and when you do, don't come crawling back to us. If I fail, it will be my failure, I said. If I succeed, it will be my success. Either way, it will be mine, not yours. I am done being your prop, your disappointment, your punching bag. I am done being part of the bellwether empire of dysfunction. I walked past them to the bathroom door and knocked gently. Noah, buddy, you can come out now. Noah emerged slowly, looking scared. He saw the crowd of people in the hallway and pressed against my leg. Are they going to take me away? He whispered. I picked him up and held him tight. Nobody is taking you anywhere, I promised. You are staying right here with me. My mother started to say something, but Patricia held up a hand. I would advise against any further contact, she said. The restraining order is in effect immediately. If you have any questions or wish to contest the custody arrangement, you can contact my office and we will schedule a proper legal proceeding. But any attempt to communicate with Ethan or Noah outside of official channels will be considered a violation of the court order. Do you understand? My father crumpled the papers in his hand. This isn't over, he said. Actually, Marcus said, speaking for the first time, it really is. He crossed his arms and gave my father a look that was pure Brooklyn street wisdom. You lost. Your son is more successful in 5 months of independence than he ever would have been under your control. Take the L and move on. We left them standing in that narrow hallway and went back into the room. I locked the door and heard them argue for a few minutes before finally leaving. Their footsteps echoed down the stairs and then there was silence. Noah looked up at me with his big brown eyes. Are they gone? They are gone, I said. Forever. For as long as we need them to be. 3 months later, I stood backstage at the Music Hall of Williamsburg waiting for my cue. It wasn't Madison Square Garden, but it was the opening slot for the Weathervanes, a nationally touring indie band with a dedicated following. They had heard my demo through Lisa at Anthem Records and offered me the spot. It paid $1,000 more than I had ever made from a single show. More importantly, there were going to be talent scouts in the audience from bigger labels, bigger venues, bigger opportunities. Noah was in the wings with Marcus, wearing a tiny pair of blue headphones to protect his ears. He was bouncing with excitement, his face bright and healthy. When he saw me, he waved frantically. Good luck, Ethan Daddy, he called out, and my heart swelled with so much love I thought it might burst. I plugged in my Stratocaster and tuned it carefully. The guitar felt like an extension of my body, now familiar and perfect. Through the stage curtain, I could hear the crowd, maybe 500 people who had paid money to be there. I thought about my father's blank check, about how tempting it might have been 6 months ago. I thought about the guitar he had smashed into my skull, about how that single moment of violence had somehow catalyzed everything that came after. The stage manager gave me the signal, showtime. I walked out into the lights and the crowd noise swelled. I couldn't see individual faces through the glare, but I could feel their energy, their anticipation. I stepped up to the microphone and let the moment wash over me. This was real. This was earned. This was mine. This song is for everyone who was ever told they were nothing, I said, my voice steady and clear. For everyone who was silenced or controlled or used as a bargaining chip. I spent 20 years trying to be what my family wanted me to be. Then one night my father smashed a guitar into my head because I refused to perform at his political fundraiser. He gave me 14 stitches and a choice. Stay and be broken, or leave and build myself back up from nothing. I played the opening chords, letting them ring out pure and strong. I chose nothing, and I would make that choice again every single day. The crowd erupted and I launched into the song. For those 4 minutes, nothing else existed. Not my father's rage, not my mother's coldness, not Tiffany's betrayal. Just the music and the truth and the knowledge that I had survived. More than survived. I had transformed. After the show, Lisa introduced me to a room full of people whose names I barely registered. Producers, managers, radio programmers, festival coordinators. They all wanted to talk business, but first I went backstage to Noah. He jumped into my arms and I held him tight. "Did you like it?" I asked. "You were the loudest," he said seriously, and I laughed until tears ran down my face. Later that night, back in our tiny room above the auto shop after Noah had fallen asleep and I was lying on the air mattress staring at the ceiling, I checked my phone. There was a news alert. Local developer Victor Bellwether under investigation for fraud and bribery. I clicked on it. The article was detailed and damning. Apparently, my father had been cutting corners on multiple major projects, bribing building inspectors, falsifying safety reports, and using campaign contributions to secure favorable zoning decisions. The investigation had been going on for months, but it had just gone public. Senator Aldrich had released a statement condemning my father and returning all campaign contributions. My father's business partners were distancing themselves. His empire was collapsing in real time. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired and free and grateful that I had gotten out when I did. My father had built his entire life on corruption and control, and now it was catching up to him. I had built my life on authenticity and hard work, and it was just beginning. I set down the phone and looked around our tiny room. The air mattress, the hot plate, the single window that looked out at a brick wall. This place had been my salvation. This poverty had been my freedom. And now with the label deal and the touring opportunity and the slowly growing recognition, I was going to build something better. Not a mansion full of expensive lies. Just a real home where Noah could grow up safe and loved and free to be whoever he wanted to be. So here is what I learned from all of this. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you will treat you like a commodity. They will use you, hurt you, and expect you to be grateful for the abuse because it comes wrapped in financial security or family loyalty. But you are not a commodity. You are not a prop in someone else's story. You are the author of your own life. Walking away was the hardest thing I ever did. Starting over with nothing but a 5-year-old $200 and a broken guitar felt impossible. But impossible just meant I had to work harder, believe stronger, and refuse to let anyone define my worth except myself. So let me ask you this. Is there someone in your life who makes you feel like you are nothing? Someone who takes and takes but never gives? Someone who uses love as a weapon instead of a gift? What would it take for you to walk away? What would it look like to rebuild yourself from nothing? If this story resonated with you, if you have ever felt trapped in a toxic relationship or doubted your worth because someone told you that you were not enough, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story about finding strength in impossible situations. And, most importantly, leave a comment below. Tell me about your breaking point. Tell me about the moment you chose yourself. Tell me about your journey from nothing to something. Because every story matters and every voice deserves to be heard. Thank you for listening to mine.